I know that some now criticize the action in Libya as an object lesson. They point to the problems that the country now confronts: a democratically elected government struggling to provide security, armed groups, in some places extremists, ruling parts of a fractured land. And so these critics argue that any intervention to protect civilians is doomed to fail. Look at Libya. No one is more mindful of these problems than I am, for they resulted in the death of 4 outstanding U.S. citizens who were committed to the Libyan people, including Ambassador Chris Stevens, a man whose courageous efforts helped save the city of Benghazi. But does anyone truly believe that the situation in Libya would be better if Gaddafi had been allowed to kill, imprison, or brutalize his people into submission? It's far more likely that without international action, Libya would now be engulfed in civil war and bloodshed. We live in a world of imperfect choices. Different nations will not agree on the need for action in every instance. And the principle of sovereignty is at the center of our international order. But sovereignty cannot be a shield for tyrants to commit wanton murder. Or an excuse for the international community to turn a blind eye. While we need to be modest in our belief that we can remedy every evil, while we need to be mindful that the world is full of unintended consequences, should we really accept the notion that the world is powerless in the face of a Rwanda or Srebrenica? If that's the world that people want to live in, they should say so and reckon with the cold logic of mass graves. but I believe we can embrace a different future. And if we don't want to choose between inaction and war, we must get better, all of us, at the policies that prevent the breakdown of basic order. Through respect for the responsibilities of nations and the rights of individuals. Through meaningful sanctions for those who break the rules. Through dogged diplomacy that resolves the root causes of conflict, not merely its aftermath. Through development assistance that brings hope to the marginalized. And yes, sometimes, although this will not be enough, there are going to be moments where the international community will need to acknowledge that the multilateral use of military force may be required to prevent the very worst from occurring. Ultimately, this is the international community that America seeks, one where nations do not covet the land or resources of other nations, but one in which we carry out the founding purpose of this institution and where we all take responsibility. A world in which the rules established out of the horrors of war can help us resolve conflicts peacefully. And prevent the kinds of wars that our forefathers fought. A world where human beings can live with dignity and meet their basic needs. Whether they live in New York or Nairobi, in Peshawar or Damascus. These are extraordinary times, with extraordinary opportunities. Thanks to human progress, a child born anywhere on Earth today can do things today that 60 years ago would have been out of reach for the mass of humanity. I saw this in Africa, where nations moving beyond conflict are now poised to take off. And America is with them, partnering to feed the hungry and care for the sick. And to bring power to places off the grid. I see it across the Pacific region. Where hundreds of millions have been lifted out of poverty in a single generation. I see it in the faces of young people everywhere who can access the entire world with the click of a button. And who are eager to join the cause of eradicating extreme poverty. And combating climate change, starting businesses, expanding freedom. And leaving behind the old ideological battles of the past. That's what's happening in Asia and Africa. It's happening in Europe and across the Americas. That's the future that the people of the Middle East and North Africa deserve as well, one where they can focus on opportunity. Instead of whether they'll be killed or repressed because of who they are or what they believe. Time and again, nations and people have shown our capacity to change. To live up to humanity's highest ideals, to choose our better history. Last month, I stood where 50 years ago Martin Luther King Jr. told America about his dream, at a time when many people of my race could not even vote for president. Earlier this year, I stood in the small cell where Nelson Mandela endured decades cut off from his own people and the world. Who are we to believe that today's challenges cannot be overcome? When we have seen what changes the human spirit can bring. who in this hall can argue that the future belongs to those who seek to repress that spirit? Rather than those who seek to liberate it? I know what side of history I want to the United States of America to be on. We're ready to meet tomorrow's challenges with you, firm in the belief that all men and women are in fact created equal. Each individual possessed with a dignity and inalienable rights that cannot be denied. That is why we look to the future not with fear, but with hope. And that's why we remain convinced that this community of nations can deliver a more peaceful, prosperous and just world to the next generation. Thank you very much. Barack Obama. Address to the United Nations General Assembly, 65th Session GD. Delivered September 23, 2010, New York, New York. Mr. President, Mr. Secretary General, my fellow delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor to address this assembly for the second time. Nearly 2 years after my election as President of the United States. We know this is no ordinary time for our people. Each of us comes here with our own problems and priorities. But there are also challenges that we share in common as leaders and as nations. We meet within an institution built from the rubble of war, designed to unite the world in pursuit of peace. And we meet within a city that for centuries has welcomed people from across the globe. Demonstrating that individuals of every color, faith, and station can come together to pursue opportunity. build a community, and live with the blessing of human liberty. Outside the doors of this hall, the blocks and neighborhoods of this great city tell the story of a difficult decade. "9 years ago, the destruction of the World Trade Center signaled a threat that respected no boundary of dignity or decency. Two years ago this month, a financial crisis on Wall Street devastated American families on Main Street. These separate challenges have affected people around the globe. Men and women and children have been murdered by extremists from Casablanca to London, from Jalalabad to Jakarta. The global economy suffered an enormous blow during the financial crisis. Crippling markets and deferring the dreams of millions on every continent. Underneath these challenges to our security and prosperity lie deeper fears. That ancient hatreds and religious divides are once again ascendant. That a world which has grown more interconnected has somehow slipped beyond our control. These are some of the challenges that my administration has confronted since we came into office. And today, I'd like to talk to you about what we've done over the last 20 months to meet these challenges. What our responsibility is to pursue peace in the Middle East. And what kind of world we are trying to build in this 21st century. Let me begin with what we have done. I have had no greater focus as president than rescuing our economy from potential catastrophe. And in an age when prosperity is shared, we could not do this alone. So America has joined with nations around the world to spur growth. And the renewed demand that could restart job creation. We are reforming our system of global finance, beginning with Wall Street reform here at home. So that a crisis like this never happens again. And we made the G20 the focal point for international coordination. Because in a world where prosperity is more diffuse, we must broaden our circle of cooperation. To include emerging economies from every corner of the globe. There is much to show for our efforts, even as there is much work to be done. The global economy has been pulled back from the brink of a depression, and is growing once more. We have resisted protectionism, and are exploring ways to expand trade and commerce among nations. But we cannot and will not rest until these seeds of progress grow into a broader prosperity. Not only for all Americans, but for peoples around the globe. As for our common security, America is waging a more effective fight against Al-Qaeda. While winding down the war in Iraq. Since I took office, the United States has removed nearly 100,000 troops from Iraq. We have done so responsibly. As Iraqis have transitioned to lead responsibility for the security of their country. We are now focused on building a lasting partnership with the Iraqi people. While keeping our commitment to remove the rest of our troops by the end of next year. While drawing down in Iraq, we have refocused on defeating Al-Qaeda and denying its affiliates a safe haven. In Afghanistan, the United States and our allies are pursuing a strategy to break the Taliban's momentum and build the capacity of Afghanistan's government and security forces. So that a transition to Afghan responsibility can begin next July. And from South Asia to the Horn of Africa, we are moving toward a more targeted approach, one that strengthens our partners and dismantles terrorist networks without deploying large American armies.